Hello, everybody, and welcome to your Nature Journal Educators Forum. Today is Darwin Day, and we thank you for celebrating this with us. I've got the full text of Origin of Species in case anybody wanted to read it, um, and and it's a page turner. Um, Today we have a special guest who I've asked to come and join us. Um, Dan Webster is a practitioner of forest bathing and a longtime naturalist, and um, and the two of us have did a experiment together. We did a program kind of connecting forest bathing practices with nature journaling. Um, and we loved it, and so did our participants. We had an absolutely great time. Um, and so what we thought we'd do is just sort of describe that, bounce those ideas around, then kind of do with a kind of a deeper dive into what is forest bathing and kind of the structure of it and the thinking and the history behind that, and then come back around and think about some lessons learned for combining forest bathing and nature journaling programs. And if at any point there are questions that you have, feel free to drop those into the chat, and Billy Joe might drop those into our conversation. Or at the end of this, we'll also have an opportunity to have a larger group conversation if you want to kind of come live on the screen with us and drop in any of those questions. So Dan Webster, thank you so much for being here.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me. We're looking forward to this.
So maybe just to start to introduce you to folks here, could you give people a little bit more sort of sense of your background and how that led you to being a forest bathing practitioner?
hmm well, through college, I wasn't doing, I was in psychology a little bit, but I really wasn't doing much science at all. And ultimately thought I was going to be a history and economics and government high school teacher. But I've always had this deep, love of being in nature, being in the woods. Started in Maine, growing up in the, with incredible forests all around. And so my early experiences with nature was really experiential, knowing what a spruce tree was and sandstone, but really not on any kind of taxonomic scale or any kind of a scientific scale. So after college, I wound up working for years and years in outdoor education here in California. And that led me down the rabbit hole of science and natural history and connecting what I'm experiencing in nature
Mhm.
with this background of science and biology and ecology, botany, and all the wonderful ologies. And so years after doing science and teaching classroom science, um, and college graduate level work in environmental phenomenology, I stumbled upon this concept that was sort of brewing called forest bathing, nature therapy. And it really, for me, wove together the act of being in nature and learning from it with just the context of just enjoying it and being a part of it. And that
Mhm.
really kind of brings the things together. So when I was teaching classroom science, I was doing a little bit of nature journaling through the what I called science illustration, because that was a way for me to get the kids into not like nature journaling, what's that? Uh, but teaching them to observe closely and to be detailed. And then, having followed your work since the guidebook, Jack, and in your deep dive into forest or nature journaling, it was wonderful. So I started incorporating some of your beautiful lessons that you put on your website for free, and really got, fascinated by your process and what you're doing with nature journaling, and then noticing the symbiotic relationship
Mhm. Mhm.
between what people are experiencing when they're nature journaling and what my new practice as being a certified forest therapy guide, and kind of coming together in this kind of state of mindfulness that it allows for. And so that's what led me to approaching you to see if you were interested in combining and doing that experiment. And through the Yosemite Conservancy, which we did last October in the park.
For me, it was a real eye opener. I've been thinking of starting more and more and more to on my own frame the nature journaling process as a mindfulness exercise. It's from the moment you're putting your metadata down on the paper, the location and the weather and the date, you're here and now. And then the more that you can drop into that experience, the more immersive and relevant and fun the nature journaling experience is. Um, but working with you really helped me um, connect with those fundamental sort of mindfulness elements on a much, much, much deeper level. Maybe rather, it'd be fun if we could kind of just take everybody who's watching right now and we all kind of go out and we did it together.
Yeah.
Um, but maybe what we could do is sort of kind of walk with us and let's just sort of take them through. We did a program for 2 days. And so Dan and I led a program in Yosemite National Park. And it was an integration of nature journaling and forest bathing practices. And so we're going to kind of let's sort of talk people through what that looked like, and then we can um, and so let's try just sort of interrupting each other and sort of adding details. So like, oh yeah, and there's this part of it, and this is this and this. That sound good?
Mhm. Yeah.
All right. So we met up at Crane Flat, which is in a sort of deep coniferous forest, and did some group introductions, um, and tone setting. I thought that you gave people sort of a lot of thoughts, sort of kind of taking care of, so people were kind of coming to that natural environment with concerns and worries about, am I physically safe here? You kind of helped people um, uh, sort of deal with that and sort of did some things kind of with group safety at the start. Is that sort of a regular part of forest safety, or is that more come from, I mean, of forest bathing, or is that more from just sort of your experience as a guide?
Well, both, definitely each Yosemite Conservancy activity that I lead, we really cover risk management, talking about the things that can help us have a successful time together. But then I process that through the lens of forest bathing, forest therapy, which is to frame it in terms of awarenesses. And so, in this forest, whatever environment we're in, what are things that we should be aware of? Are there plants that we could touch that could give us a stinging sensation or an itchy rash, or are there little eight-legged arachnids that want to suck our blood and we should be checking when we're when
Those
we're
rascals.
done, or those types of things. So it's kind of a balance of not wanting to, you really want people to feel comfortable. You really want people to be able to feel like I can sit down on the ground and I can lean against this tree and I can, you know, come home with, you know, sticks and twigs and leaves in my hair and all that, but with an awareness that, beginner's mind, that there are things that we should be careful and mindful of for our own safety and for the safety of the forest as well.
Yeah, that that sort of tone for, I think, especially for people who don't have, say, a family or cultural tradition of being out in nature. Just that it wasn't alarmist. It was just sort of bringing awareness to these things, and sort of knowing that we're here and we're safe, and also kind of let them know that people who were running this had sort of a situational awareness of what was
Mhm.
going on. And
Mhm.
so you are safe just kind of dropping into this experience without having to, um, without wondering, is somebody minding the store? So I thought that sort of physical safety can lead to sort of helps sort of lead to emotional safety, and that can open you up for the next phase of the experience.
That's right. And then I like to set the stage and talking about, how great it is to be outdoors and how, certainly anyone who's found their way to a workshop such of this or any other type of activity that I'm leading in the woods, they already kind of know that. They know they like to be outdoors and they know that it makes them feel good on some level. And the great thing is we're finding out there's been so much research done in the last 20 years about, we really have really some really good ideas about why being in nature makes us feel really good. And I like to, preface it by letting people know that, there's probably lots of different ways that they've spent time outdoors and that there's no wrong way
Mm.
to be outdoors. Gardening, taking a walk, walking to work in San Francisco, um, popping the earbuds in and going for a trail run, or, walking with some friends and talking about the movie that you saw last night. These are all experiences in nature outdoors that you are going to benefit from, that you're going to feel good doing. But with I think nature journaling both and forest bathing, what you're doing is you're really concentrating that. You're really cutting it down to uh, to a really concentrated essence, and for certainly both, really slowing down. These
Mhm.
are not going to be activities where we're going to work up a sweat hiking. So in the cooler weather, and when awareness is, you want to really pack on the layers because we're not going to be like walking 5 miles uphill. And so, different than all of those other activities that I mentioned before, what you're going to experience in a forest bathing setting, in a guided hike. I mean, we can do forest bathing in our own backyards or anywhere, but in a guided setting, what you're going to be experiencing is a really slow, a really slow walk with plenty of sitting and standing, chances to individually experience the phenomena of nature, and then opportunities to hold space for others as we share what the experience has been like or not, or whatever we're comfortable with. So yeah, just really still trying to set that tone for being really comfortable and being really accepted. And one of my roles as a guide, which was really different than other forms of guiding that I've done, is when we're, say, having a kind of a sharing, a go round, talking about, what we're experiencing. My role as a guide is to practice what's called omnipartiality, whereas,
That's a new term for me. Omnipartiality.
omnipartiality, right? So, you know, if I'm doing a typical kind of circle after a hike, and people are talking, I might be like, yeah, they might say something that really, oh, I'm so glad you got that, or that really resonates with me too, or if it's introductions and they say, oh, I'm from Massachusetts, I'm like, oh, I'm from Maine, that's so great. So I'm showing partiality to that person's individual experience. And then what can happen, and I do it myself too, when I'm in a class, is I like to let the teacher know that I'm with them, and I'm getting something from it. So in a forest bathing experience, I really want the attention and the focus to be on the individual process. And so I try to respond when people are talking and sharing what they've experienced, either by not reacting at all or making sure that I'm kind of giving the same reaction to every participant so that I'm not saying, ooh, that's really good. You did a great
Hmm.
job. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And
That
so
you
really allowing them to have their own experience without being validated by me.
Interesting.
And that's taken some that's taken some practice as a guide because I tend to be very interested. But there are times within a walk, especially when you have a whole weekend with people, as we did, and we will in September, to engage more individually and personally and that way
Yeah.
as well.
So from this introduction, we then made our way along a road and off trail into a forested area. And the it you took us through a meditation that
Mhm.
was um, that began with the breath
Mhm.
and took us through every sense that we could really interact with there. And it was that we were spread out in a part of the forest that people could be kind of far away enough from you to feel like they had their own space, but still um, but close enough that they could kind of comfortably hear your voice.
Right.
So you had some space. If I remember correctly, you invited us to take off our shoes if we felt so inclined.
Hmm.
Um, and could you describe that? Um, it seemed like a very intentional series of of meditations that you took us through. By the time we're done with that. Just I had a very visceral, sublime sense of being in my body and connection with that place.
Yeah.
And it wasn't by accident. I was wondering if you might kind of walk us through that. 'Cause that I took a whole page of notes on what it was like. I want to do this. I was with a bunch of outdoor educators on Catalina Island this weekend,
Uh-huh.
and I tried to invoke as much of that exercise because it was just so rich. Did it with them, and then we did some poetry writing off of it.
Hmm.
Um, but kind of flesh that out for us a little bit more because that was brilliantly orchestrated.
Hmm. Thanks. Yeah, and that's exactly what you want people to come away with that sense of dropping into the body. And so the type of mindfulness that we talk about when we think about forest bathing is paying attention on purpose in the moment here. And then I think very importantly, non-judgmentally.
Hmm.
So that's a part of mindfulness that I think often gets lost in the discussion of general mindfulness practices is that non-judgmental part. And so it's really important to even help people invite people to become non-judgmental about their body and listening to their body. And so as I invite people to settle in and find a place to sit if they feel comfortable sitting, stand if they'd rather do that, but to listen to their body. And as they settle in, is their body asking for something? Do we need to shift or do you need to change to not feel like you have to be in a circle or looking at me or anything like that? To just be really non-judgmental about how you approach this process of sitting with a group of people, in the forest, and then listening to me. But in the behind the curtain, that activity, that invitation, it's really the first invitation of what we call a standard sequence in a forest bathing walk. And that invitation is called pleasure of presence. And of course, I don't tell people that's what it's called. I just invite them to do it. But yes, we ideally want people to feel a sense of pleasure being in their body, in this place, in this moment, non-judgmentally. And so, yeah, so first it's just inviting people to really look around, really take in their environment, look around like they've never seen it before, and just non-judgmentally observe and and really pay attention. And then to settle into breathing, settle into their comfortable, normal breathing. And then if people feel comfortable, to close their eyes. And then once people are doing that, then I will kind of take them through just a little field trip through their senses.
Yeah.
So I'll invite people to notice what they can hear and notice sounds that may be close or right around them. Or then are there any kind of mid-level sounds from the trees? Are there any distant sounds? And are there sounds, are they all what we consider nature, or are there human sounds too? Again, that non-judgmental aspect, just dropping in and paying attention, really giving some focus to that sense of hearing and being aware that we are taking these vibrations into our body. We are here with them now. And then the same thing with the sensation of touch. And so with the sensation of touch, I first invite them, kind of an extension of their breathing, is to be aware of the air around them. And can they feel the air? Can they feel the air on their face, in your hair, any on your arms, or any exposed skin, or even the air underneath your clothing? And then I remember you really liked this part, you told me later, but I said,
Yeah.
just try moving your hands, feeling the air as you move your hands through the air, and then bringing your fingertips together. And just notice that sense of touch, fingertip to fingertip. And as they slide down between the fingers into the palm, the other hand, fingertips on the back of the hands, just noticing that sense of touch. And then to put your hands at your sides and take a little field trip with your fingertips, noticing
I
what's moving
love
around
that
you.
that sort of finger walk, that little that was a wonderful way to kind of frame it for me.
Yeah, people wouldn't get it anymore if you said, let your fingers do the walking. What's on the yellow,
That's
remember the
true.
yellow pages? But yeah, to take it with your eyes closed, just take a little field trip and maybe pick an object or a being up and
Mhm.
give that your full attention now, and paying attention to texture, and if there's a squishiness or a hardness or a flakiness, or is there kind of a sound that can come from it, and then putting it back. But in this way, just walking through the senses. And the grand purpose, kind of again behind the curtain part, is wanting people to, and carefully wording things so that people aren't thinking about what they're doing,
Oh,
but
say
just
say more
experiencing.
about that. I think that is a really interesting idea.
Yeah, the non-thinking part, right? Because we're in our heads all the time,
Hmm.
and we are bombarded with information and thoughts, and many of them wonderful, stimulating, um, and many of them not so wonderful and can be stressful and um, caustic. But it's a rare thing to just accidentally give ourselves permission to be an animal in nature, to just be relying on senses and just be taking information, taking in this place non-judgmentally through our senses. And then when we do that, that gets to a kind of a flow state. When you get there, you're in kind of what many different people would call like a flow state, where you're not thinking and
Hmm.
you're totally present. And so it sometimes really takes someone to guide you to that place, or to really think about it in order to do that, because it's so easy to be in our heads. It's so easy to be thinking. And for me, as a naturalist, and we all know this, I love to be out there and thinking about things in the broader ecological sense, and
Yep.
looking at the taxonomy and the interrelationships, and that's super, super stimulating to me. But giving myself this opportunity to take a break from that and really get out of my mind and really just be an animal, really just be sensing. It really what it does is I think it allows you to become connected and not just intellectually connected, like I know my place in this and ecosystem and I'm, blah 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 blah, and I know my taxonomy as a human and da 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 da, but really just to be connected. And I think that is the beauty of the practice of forest bathing, and it gives us that opportunity to really kind of get to that place of non-judgmental um, connection.
And there was as we were kind of going through each of those senses, also, keying into the smells or the uh the or what was inside. You also kind of set sort of uh each time that we would kind of shift from one thing to another, you'd bring us back to our breath.
Mhm.
So we started with that attention on the breath, then focused on a sense, and then came back to the breath, focused on another sense, came back to the breath. And that just sort of that in addition to kind of getting in more reps with the breath, um, also sort of set a kind of pace. It allowed my brain to kind of, okay, we're now ready for the next thing.
Right,
Sort of like clearing your palate
right.
between concepts. I thought that was um, very very well done. And I was wondering, like in the training that you did to become a certified forest bathing guide, are they kind of walking people through exercises like this? Is what we did there? Let's say I went to, say, Japan and went on a forest bathing experience. Would they be using similar sorts of approaches? Or is a lot of this stuff that you have innovated off of a set of kind of core ideas?
Good question. Good question. So we use the term forest bathing, which came from Japan in 1982, and it in the Japanese language is called shinrin-yoku, and the closest translation we have to that in English is forest bathing or immersing yourself. Like when you take a bath, when you go in a river, you're immersing yourself in that environment. You're 100% in. And so the forest bathing concept, as they say on the Yosemite Conservancy blurb, like no need to bring a towel. It's not bathing in that sense. But so Shinrin-yoku, forest bathing, that is a unique type of guiding experience in Japan. And it came from, decades of Japan, which is an incredibly rich forest culture. 80 million people, but in a matter of decades, they revolutionized their culture to supply the world with electronics.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, made in Japan, everything was made in Japan. And that brought on the stressors of modern industrial urban life. And so medical people, forestry people kind of came together in this kind of conference and came up with this idea of reconnecting people with their forest roots, with their deep Shinto and Buddhist forest roots. And so their practice is called forest bathing. And yes, you can go to Japan today and there can be guided experiences, and there's often a medical aspect where oftentimes they'll do blood pressure and respiration rate and heart rate checks, swab the cheek for to see how much cortisol, how much stress hormone, which can be detected from your cheek, and then go through a forest bathing experience and then recheck all those vital statistics afterwards. And almost every time you're going to see a drop, you're going to see a regulation. And um, and so that got blended with folks in the West into kind of a concept that's called forest therapy. And so the organization that I was trained through is called the Association of Nature and Forest Therapy, uh, brought into the world by a man named Clifford Amos. And so what he has taken aspects of forest bathing from Japan, Zen, Zen meditation, Jungian psychology, deep wilderness experience, and kind of come up with this what we call forest bathing, but it's more of an amalgamation, more of a concentration of things. So it's not pure forest bathing like you might experience if you go to Japan, but you would see some of those.
Hmm.
But the thing about the breath, and that really relates to, you might do breath work, you might do yoga where breathing techniques are incorporated, or you might go to a meditation practice where breathing techniques are incorporated. And so there's this kind of universal idea that the breath connects us with the now. In a sense, what do we have? What do we really have in this world? The breath that you're taking right now. And so, yeah, so by returning to the breath in between those kind of sensory uh, excursions, it gives people, it is, yeah, I think you said like a palate cleanser, right?
Yeah.
It's a chance to just, oh yeah, return to me, return to me. And if you were meditating and you're watching the thoughts, you're trying not to think about those thoughts, right? You're trying to let them go. The breathing, the return to the breath is a great way to do that because it's simple. Like, okay, notice my breath. One inhale, one exhale. But then what I like to do and what I've learned to do with the breath is connecting people to the idea, and it's more than an idea, it's a reality. The idea that we are breathing with this planet. We are breathing oxygen that
Hmm.
has been created by plants. And we breathe back out. Well, we breathe about oxygen too, but we breathe out heat and we breathe out carbon dioxide. And guess what plants are taking in to photosynthesize, right? They're taking in carbon dioxide and using water from the ground and photons from the sun to do this chloroplast photosynthesis, which creates glucose, and as a byproduct is pumping out oxygen. And so, of course, that's heady, right? So I don't do all that. I don't talk about that, but that's the reality of what's happening. So when we're breathing in oxygen from plants, we're expelling carbon dioxide, which plants are taking in, and then putting out more oxygen. So we are breathing. And when you're in a green, forested, planty environment, you can really get that sense that you are breathing with this place. You are breathing with this forest. And what a beautiful, I mean, that's just like rocking in a cradle, I'm breathing with this forest. I think did I see a couple of questions pop in?
Yeah,
Did
I
we
was
want
just
to
going
take
to say, I
those?
just wanted to wait for a little break there. So Todd
Yeah.
was asking, how did you approach taste in your survey of the senses? I often mention it on my tours, but realize there is a certain amount of risk and personal liability to be aware of.
Yeah, taste, oftentimes there's taste is not going to be as rich as hearing or feeling air and those sort of things. So it's usually a fairly short for me, a fairly short exploration, but just allowing for the possibility that can you taste the air? And sometimes I've had people like, take a gulp. Can you feel texture? Can you taste anything from the air? Or do you taste that last sip of coffee that you had or a little bit from breakfast? Just to introduce it as a sense. But I don't, and with the liability part, right, right. Um, as we get to the end of the forest bathing walk, yes, there's a very safe place for taste to come in. But in that first pleasure of presence, introduction to the senses, I just, brush through it pretty quickly. And then after that invitation, the invitations are again sensory explorations, and I don't include taste in any of those.
Yeah. So we sat there. I still remember the sun filtering through. I remember with my eyes closed how when you got me to, it wasn't just, okay, now feel something around you, but you really had us pay attention to the feeling that we were getting. And then when your hands went down into the soil on either side of you, it was it was startling. Um, but we did that sort of in place there with the breathing. And then and in motion as we you invited people to kind of get up and to start to move around that meadow. I think that our first thing that we were looking at, if I'm remembering correctly, was that we are just sort of noticing movement in things.
Mm-hmm.
And I had never I think sometimes like the sort of tracker in me, I'm like looking for animal motion, but noticing the little vibration of things, the bigger of other things, and sort of things in whether the trees are moving. It was pretty still, um, but that was um, it was a way of moving through that meadow that I had never done before.
Mm-hmm.
And for all the meadows that I've moved for, that's really, really cool.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but you had us also looking for, or sometimes with kind of a concept in our head, like uh, something that was in the process of transforming or process of changing. Um, but those were kind of more moving meditations in the forest. Is that also part of sort of the formal structure of forest bathing?
Yes. And I will say I've noticed a couple of questions and we'll get to those. So thank you. Thank you for participating and we will get to those. But yeah, so what I do, and there's definitely room for, making things your own and very much room for leaning into what the forest is offering on that day. And like you said, there wasn't a lot of tree waving. So, if there was, or if there was an area where if there was a lot of bird song, I definitely would have crafted an invitation that would have taken advantage of things like that. But so yes, in what we call the standard sequence, we go from pleasure of presence to always the first invitation being what's in motion.
Hmm.
And then from there, it's the guide's, bouquet and choices and what the forest is offering at any given time. But the what's in motion is always the first thing we do. And people will usually preface it by saying something to the effect of, I remember talking about this before we dropped down into the forest to really start. But I said sometimes we experience what I call the green blur, where you're just moving through the forest and there's greenery and you're getting to that peak, and it's just things are just the green blur. It's just
Yeah.
sliding by and there's like, you're passing up worlds and universes and it's okay because your goal on that particular day is to get to the peak. Um, so this is an opportunity to let go of that sense of expectation and hurry and objective, and to just the what's in motion, the keying into what's in motion is a little bit like the breath. It's a little bit like a palate cleanser because you might notice some leaves over here, and then so you just kind of notice that and see what's going on there, and then you might notice, oh, there's a spider web moving through the air, or as you look up, you might see clouds slowly moving. And of course, the bottom line is that everything is moving all the time, all at once. We are all vibrational beings, right? We are all made of cells and molecules, atoms that are everything, rocks, water, air, atoms moving at speeds and rates that are unfathomable. Of course, we're moving through space, our own planet orbiting the sun, our solar system moving with our galaxy expanding out through the universe. So, I mean, the cool thing is movement is universal, literally universal. But in that drop-in place in your body with your eyes in that particular forest or coastline or prairie or grassland or desert or wherever you might be, looking for the things in motion is just a way to non-judgmentally key in to the environment. And I think I tried to weave in a little bit of an answer to who was it? Emily maybe
Oh,
asked a question about.
I see Cindy has a question. It says, in terms of forest bathing, oh, sorry, is the term forest bathing always associated with being in a literal forest? Do you guide in other locations like a park, etc.?
Yeah, sky is the limit, right? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if, well, not skydiving probably, but I'd
But
say
there'd definitely be
lithosphere.
something in motion there.
There'd be a lot of motion, right? I'll say lithosphere is the limit, you know. Yeah, people guide forest bathing and people can individually do forest bathing activities in any environment, you know, desert, coastline, estuary, uh, you know, alpine, subalpine. Yeah, it definitely got stuck with the moniker forest bathing, and I think that's my experience being a Yosemite based naturalist. Forest is my home habitat. But yeah, it can be anywhere, and it can even be indoors. You know, I did my training just at the tail end of the pandemic, and some of the things that we were doing were doing virtual forest bathing with you know people on their smartphones or a tablet outdoors and even indoors. Because you know when you think about being mindful and you think about using your senses, you know, and you think about that we are Earth. Earth is in us. There's every single part of us, including the clothes that we're wearing, you know, come from the Earth. That Earth is not limited to some place out there. And yes, it's great. It is great to get away and to go to beautiful, expansive, you know, amazing natural spots and wilderness. But nature is truly everywhere. So, you know, whether that's a city park. Oh, when I was teaching a graduate course on environmental phenomenology, I started using a lot of nature journaling
Hmm.
because these were online classes. And I told people, I am not going to have you sit in front of your computer for 6 hours a day, folks. So, you know, incorporated a lot of asynchronous, you know, activities. And I stumbled upon, you know, the forest or nature journaling as a way to get them to connect. You know, this was incorporating, you know, next generation science standards, phenomenology, uh, in journaling, something they could go outside. They could do it in a front yard, in a backyard, on a city sidewalk with one tree, you know, anywhere, grass growing through concrete. They could do this kind of thing anywhere. So nature really can be anywhere. And some of the forest bathing trails in Japan are in urban parks. And there's been some pretty conclusive research done. They've, you know, had people like take a 20-minute walk through just a really urban setting versus a 20-minute walk through a urban park. And we definitely get some of the benefits of nature and being in nature, even in just an urban park with play structures and manicured lawns and everything compared to just being in an urban street environment. So yeah, so nature really can be anywhere. So, you know, you could you could use an orange or a cutie, whatever a cutie is, clementine, and really explore this. I mean, feel the texture. I can feel the temperature difference, certainly smell. You know, I could have a really nice little mindful experience just exploring the exterior of this little cutie.
Dan Star's wondering, do you incorporate periods of silence?
I know you wouldn't know it from the way I'm rambling on now. Definitely, yes. And so uh, even in that pleasure of presence, beginning activity where I'm guiding people through the senses and returning to the breath, I'm taking plenty of nice pauses to make sure that people have a chance to absorb that experience. But then once we get out and we're starting to move, albeit slowly, once we get out and starting to move and doing other invitations, then people are on their own for 10 or 15 or 20 minutes. And and so that is a relatively silent experience. And then we come back together, and then I have ways of kind of processing or helping people think about sharing or not sharing in ways that they're comfortable with. But basically, it's just going to be trying to connect people with, being in the moment, but after that kind of silent exploration that they've had.
So we um, are engaging with some of these forest bathing techniques, um, starting kind of still, then with sort of a directed exercise to kind of focus us as we kind of are walking through the forest. We are out there experiencing that, coming back, getting a little bit of reflection on that, and then getting the next sort of prompt. Um, it This series of experiences eventually led us to we kind of meandered through a forest, and we came upon a little clearing in the woods where you had prepared uh, a ceremony for us.
Mm,
And I was wondering if you could describe that for people, and sort of the thinking behind that. Um, it was I found it very kind of connecting with the people that were sitting around that blanket, and also there was a beautiful kind of connections with place. I wonder if we could kind of dig a little bit deeper into that. I'll let you describe it.
mhm,
And then I'd like to kind of look at sort of how we kind of tapped in some sort of nature journaling threads
mhm,
into this.
mhm.
Um, or actually, because that may be kind of the capstone piece, is there some other element of the forest bathing that you wanted to describe before we get to that, or would this be a good time to kind of describe that experience?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. So I mean, I think you've given people a sense. We had kind of the introduction, where I talked about, awarenesses and really what forest bathing is, what we're about to do, and um, being outdoors and how good that is for us. Then the pleasure of presence and, walking through the senses. And then a series of activities, which I call invitations, very intentionally invitation, because you're inviting people. I'm inviting you, the participant, to do this thing that I'm suggesting. But, I don't want you to feel guilty if you're not feeling it
Hmm.
and you notice something else and you had a great 15-minute little exploration on something and it wasn't what I suggested to do. But that's why it's an invitation. That's why it's okay. And that's why it's non-judgmental from myself as well. And
And
so there were a series of those.
yeah, and that whole idea of the invitation allows people to this to be kind of student driven or experiencer experienced. Um, and but also as a leader, you're giving up that kind of sense of control, and you're giving people sort of permission to find their way in this. Um, that I think that as a leader, I think when we're first starting off teaching, we want to have like, I've got to have control over my group, and like, we're looking at leaves now, so you should be looking at leaves, right? But you um, you you built in wiggle room to wiggle should you need.
Mhm. Yeah, that really complemented a lot of my training from the best mentors that I had in outdoor education was, there was a phrase that was used to be the guide on the side, not the sage on the stage, right?
Mhm.
And because yeah, especially when you're new and you're full of energy and you're full of this information and you want to, not only share it but prove that you know it, and all that, it can be this temptation to put on a little show.
Right.
Which there's room for that too. That's a fine thing, and people like that. But yeah, in this type of experience, uh, I want there to be a lot of wiggling. I want there to be a lot of exploration and a lot of personal, connection, time for that personal connection, and not my agenda. So then, yeah, we went through, and I think one of the other invitations, it was really so cool because we're on that meadow post peak in terms of wildflowers and things like that. Um, but just a 6,000 foot meadow on with a nice, mid mixed conifer forest. So we kind of wove along the margin of that, which which was really, really beautiful. And I think one of the other invitations was, I think I said it was because you had that opportunity to look deep into the sky or way across the meadow, or like really up close at a faded wildflower or the ground or a fir tree. I think an invitation that I gave that day was, I think I called it zoom in, zoom out.
Hmm.
To just go back and forth a little bit and look at some of the closest things that you can see, and just give your attention to them, and then kind of let your gaze expand out, and as far as you can see, and connect and notice with what's going on, and just zoom in and zoom out a few times. That might have been one of the ones we did that day.
It was. I think the big invitations that I remember, one was that motion one. There was one about where we're looking at things that were in a state of transition or change,
That's right.
right? And
Yes.
so we're looking for those, like usually in if you're making a field guide, you try to find the flower that's in the perfect like, "Ah,"
Yeah.
right? But that's
Often.
only like one little moment. And
Yeah. Yeah.
and to sort of instead of thinking of things, of course, everything is in a state of change. But
Hmm.
when you have those change goggles on, you look around that forest in a very different way. So we did looking for things that were kind of in a state of transition, and also looking and that zoom in, zoom out um, framing. Those were really useful.
That's right. But, it was October. It was the first weekend of October, and so that's just leaning into what the forest was offering. Um, yeah, I thought, yeah, this is great transition.
Mhm.
And in a way of way, not being disappointed that, it wasn't a July 6,000 foot meadow with like flowers and
Right.
butterflies and everywhere, that it was a way of incorporating yeah, the transition of that summer into fall, and there can be a lot of richness in paying attention to transition, and that um, nature is constantly cycling, constantly changing. And as just, walking, talking little bits of nature, so are we. So are we.
That's right.
So yes, and then I think whatever that last invitation was, I said, 10 or 15 minutes, I'll give some sort of a call. And as you complete your final invitation, um, if there's something from the forest that um, you feel could, without harming anything, come with you to our final gathering, go ahead and bring that with you if you feel called to. And so then I went over and then I set up the tapestry and
Well, let's. I'm gonna frame this from the participant's perspective. right? So you're there, you're walking through the forest, you're doing your last invitation. As you do, if you kind of find something that speaks to you, however that may be, we pick that up and we can carry it with us or not. So that, again, it was an invitation.
Right.
But then at a certain point, sort of off near the lake, we hear a sound and we know that when we hear that sound, we're going to kind of converge towards that spot. So nobody's looking at their watches or anything like that.
Right.
And we come through the forest, everybody kind of from different directions at their own pace. And there is Dan, and Dan is sitting on the ground. In front of him is a blanket spread out on the pine needles. There is a there is a there are cups, there are little bowls of little different kinds of snacks, and there are kind of earthen cups and a pot of tea.
Yes.
And I'll let you take it from there. So,
Yeah.
but
Oh,
just it was just like kind of coming through the forest into into this like you'd created a little hearth for us to then reconnect around. And we came in, we sat around the edges of that blanket with our little cup in front of us, and
yeah. Thanks for walking it through that perspective. And on the other hand, I've done that. I've set that up. But then it's so beautiful to then watch people start to emerge, from different pulling out of their individual experiences from different directions to watch these beautiful human animals start to kind of emerge from the woods, and they're kind of like they're blissed out. They've been doing this for a couple hours now, and they're just like moving slow and noticing and just peaceful. It's really fun. It's one of those things where as a guide, it's like so cool to kind of see this and coming into the fruition, coming into bringing it home. And so what it was I had gathered, and this is going back to Todd's question about taste and liability. If you're doing anything where you're offering something for people to take in, you know, or you're even doing that on your own, you need to be 110% aware of say the plant that you're using, and that it's safe for human consumption, and that you tell people what it is. And so as people came in and sat around, yeah, I had the little wooden bowls as cups, and then the teapot, and I had prepared ahead of time a fir needle tea. And I forget if I did it the night before or that morning. But then I took some needles, harvested some needles freshly, just to put in the top. And as I poured the tea into the teapot from the thermos, it, you know, metaphorically, symbolically, it's this liquid is passing through a part of the forest environment that we have been being in, that we have been experiencing, that we have been taking in. And there's kind of a way of doing it, but eventually when people are offered and accept and take the teacups, then they're literally taking in the forest. So they've done it in a way of essential way of using senses, and now doing it and also essential way of taste and touch and smell and texture and all those things, but also literally into the body. And it's kind of a harvest. It's kind of a harvest of these invitations and a harvest of this experience. And and then there's always one more cup than there are people. And so kind of in an act of reciprocity, right? Which Robin Wall Kimmerer in Braiding Sweetgrass has really introduced so many people to this idea of reciprocity. For when we really are more than just appreciators of nature, But when we're really accepting our role as nature and interacting with nature, then it goes beyond an aesthetic, and it goes to a sense of what can we give back? And that is many things we can give back. We can give a song, we can give a prayer, a poem, a thought, a hair. Um, and in this act of reciprocity, we give the first cup back to the forest before we take ours. And then we give people a chance to have kind of I call it a harvest, a final harvest. I can't remember what I might have said, but it would have been, what would you like, is there anything you would like to say to make this experience complete for you? Something along those lines. And then I've also put out some snacks. So you remember the
What's
snacks?
next?
And I think I read a poem, maybe a Mary Oliver poem, when I am among the trees,
That's right.
and then just let it kind of evolve into enjoying a little tea and having some snacks and conversation in a beautiful day in the forest.
It was a profound, beautiful experience. Um, and the so um, this first day um, was um, was sort of leaning more on the forest bathing experience, and people could do a little bit of journaling with some of these things that they chose to, but it was perhaps a little bit less guided. Um, I'm gonna share. Oops, come on, that's not supposed to be that. I've got my dot camera is not wanting to really
Jack, while you're
cooperate.
getting yourself set up, I'm just going to ask another question while you're just getting yourself set up. Is that okay?
Sure.
Awesome. So Dan, did you include nature journaling as an invitation? How long was this program? And so this person, Ellen, is also an ANFT guide and teaches nature journaling, but has never combined the two. So I was just curious.
Awesome. Yeah. So yes, I went through probably the biggest international group of forest therapy training cohorts, called the Association for Nature and Forest Therapy. And it was a 6-month training. And I was really getting interested in doing it. Um, and then 2020 came along. And I think prior to 2020, they used to do it by these 8 or 9 day gatherings. And then to keep going through the pandemic, then they started offering it as this 6-month virtual weekly training. And then at the end of that, a 4-day immersion in some location. And so I thought it was great because I'm a person who can get overstimulated. And I had a feeling that if I had gone to one of these 8 or 9 day immersions, I would have been in heaven. But I also would have just been like grooving on the people and just that whole experience. But this 6-month weekly training, kind of with a lot of homework assignments, was really a way to keep coming back to it. And there were some people, and I'm still in touch with quite a few. There were about 25 of us in my cohort, and I'm still in touch with a number of them. And some of them haven't used it at all. But they don't regret doing it and what I felt for me was I was learning a language that actually added depth and beauty to a lot of the experience that I have. And so it was really, really valuable. But then for me, being a guide, and to have had the experience now of doing quite a few forest bathing guiding, and ultimately these ones that are like multiple day and then combining other things, like I've done one with yoga, is really rich. And I'm so glad that I approached Jack about this possible symbiosis of nature journaling and forest therapy, because I think there's just such rich richness in these two experiences and how they can deepen each other. And I think as you're gonna kind of setting up day two, Jack, um, then the day was more heavily leaning into the nature journaling and in a new location up at the high country up at Olmsted Point. But I was able to kind of craft elements of it
Right.
uh, and and kind of set it up for people. And boy, when we did the kind of maybe our one of our final activities, when I can't even remember what kind of prompt. Well, actually, are you going to talk about that day?
Yeah, let me just sort of bop into that. I'll share kind of some of the journaling that kind of went along with this.
Great, perfect.
And then, but and I think that on that second day when we were doing much more of like here's some journaling and then here's some forest bathing practices, the group just got into this kind of calm, focused, attentive, present place. It was sort of as a nature journal educator, it's like, yeah, this is gold. This is absolutely gold. So that it really, from my perspective as a journaling facilitator, educator. It was just kind of the vibe that I wanted to set. So here's my taking notes of our initial meeting and and experiences together, and then going into that meditation process with the breathing between it, ending up with that, one cup more than people down here that is given back to the land. Um, Invitations, kind of keeping track of those because I wanted like when I'm teaching my next group, I want to kind of pull more of this out. And then as we were doing some of these invitations, you can see here's this plant that I was investigating as I was thinking about change and transition. Um, and thinking about sort of beauty and structure and senescence, um, and sort of dropping sort of more personal thoughts about things. We see this moment, but everything is in transition. Just rates of change allow or invite us to only see a little window. Other things kind of seen through like the little mushroom, seen through the eyes of transition. And boy, talk about something in transition. Here's some bear scat. Um, so the the next day, or actually, I guess no, this was it that day? Um, yeah. So also at the end of that day, we did another journaling exercise. On the end of that first day, where we kind of in this sort of mindful state, we went to a place where people could look around and find something that interests them and use the journal to sort of drop down into the mystery that was there. We gave them a little bit of structure on some journaling skills. Um, I ended up looking at some dogwood at the end of its dog days. And then the next morning, we started at Olmsted Point. You led us through some kind of get us started mindfulness exercises that slowed the whole group down. And then as we were kind of just walking to our first destination, this wonderful story appeared in front of us as a little wasp
Mm.
um, came across the granite in front of us, carrying this little spider with it. And then the wasp flew off to go find some soft soil to dig because this wasp wants to bury the spider in soil, right? But then the wasp goes off to find that soil where it can find that. At which point a lizard pops up, and the lizard ran over and ate the spider. And then the wasp came back and was just looking all over for its little lost spider. There's this whole little drama that happened before us. Um, and uh, that was just sort of a wonderful little moment that we could also journal as we did. Um, we were out at a place with erratic boulders. And we had the day before, we had that kind of zoom in and zoom out idea. And we were doing that also now with these boulders, kind of looking out at the place around us, kind of the zoom out of um, the beautiful landscape that we're in. You're looking down, sort of in the distance, you can see Half Dome out there or Cloud's Rest, and then close by these wonderful phenomenon of these erratics. Um, those were also kind of a fun way to tie into the exercises that we had done the day before. At the the end, we were looking at having a chance to find other phenomenon. I forget. Do you remember what the prompt was for uh, the journaling prompt?
I think I think I was trying to remember. I think it was something to the effect of with your journal, um, go just wander not too far on this granite expanse, and find a I might have said a being. Find it could be a tree, a rock. Find something that is attractive to you that you feel drawn to. No pun intended. And well, maybe pun intended. Own your puns, I say. Own your puns. And and be with it. Be with that part of this environment that you've been called to spend some time with. And whatever you want to do. Do you want to draw it? Do you want to write about it? Just go ahead and use your journal and capture your time, your experience. And oh my goodness, people came back with some incredible poems and stories and songs. It was great.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, and this is interesting. Now seeing this, I remember that when we did that first uh that first time with the cups, we were not at a lake. My brain was conflating that with the second day.
Oh, right, right.
Um, isn't just memory is such a strange thing that
Yeah,
when I was initially kind of remembering this, I vividly was remembering it, but what I was doing is just taking two experiences and kind of blending them together.
yeah.
But yeah, so this day there was it was really an interesting kind of interweaving um of journaling and those and directed mindfulness practices.
Hmm.
That was um hmm, what a time to be alive.
Yes.
So we also I did a few kind of workshops to help people, like if you were to be drawing something, uh, here's some tools and techniques that you can use to kind of help you get that represented on paper. Um, but then we would come back with a focus of not having to have this be a pretty picture of this erratic boulder,
Right.
but it was about it was about the boulder, not about the way it looks on your journal. But we can still give you some strategies to help it get onto the page of your journal a little bit more easily.
Hmm.
The from and another thing that I noticed is that when the program um, ended by Tenaya Lake,
Hmm.
the group remained just stood standing around and talking in the parking lot, even though it was beginning to get cold. Um, for a very, very long time. It just sort of seemed that people, I felt sort of a strong connection to that place and to that group of people that we had spent those 2 days with. And they didn't want to leave either.
Right. And the next morning at the campground, uh, it was checkout morning, but we didn't check out until 11 or so. A lot of the folks who were camping individually and sometimes came together with others came by, and my wife was there, and I was doing some nature journaling that morning. I was super inspired, and people just came by, and they were still kind of in just that like dreamy, like blissy state, and they just had such a wonderful time. And they and actually, I had I had texted, but we didn't complete. But I need to get your address because they have some. It'll be a nice surprise for you. They have some cards and things and sayings for you. So
Oh, I
uh,
would love to see that.
email me where I can mail that.
Sure. The but um so let's now put on our educator hats because we're going to be doing this again, right? What is the date of it?
And I just dropped in chat. I dropped the link for the program from the Conservancy Outdoor Adventures webpage. I dropped that link, and I also dropped a link that's a 12-minute sort of guided little, if you want to go outdoors, and
Hmm.
I do feel like a nice little 12-minute activity that was a spur from an article that I wrote for the Yosemite Conservancy magazine. But I think it's of September 19th and 20th.
So when that comes, what should we do differently? What might we want to change? There's a lot of things which if we just did the whole same, exactly the same thing, that would be great. But are there any things that we can tweak to make this experience even richer?
Hmm. Yeah, because as you say, it was kind of an experiment, right? Neither
Yeah.
of us had done it before. We'd each done our own parts, and yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it was very organic, the way that we did it. We didn't really do a lot of, well, I shouldn't say this, but we didn't really do a lot of planning in terms of our combined parts.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, I don't have an answer for this because I do feel that the program went well. Um,
I have a thought.
okay.
Sorry. And it relates to a question that had come up earlier. Um, I think it would be worth experimenting a little bit more with, because like on day one, I just did the standard sequence forest bathing activity, and there may be some merit to doing that for sure. But I would love the opportunity to really just, with the two of us, side by side, kind of guiding activity that is literally forest bathing with the nature journaling. So I set up a forest bathing invitation. You tweak it with what you would like people to, kind of
Hmm.
frame how they might do it or a way that they might capture it in their journal and really make it not just forest bathing and nature journaling, but forest bathing, nature journaling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, where I could see sort of go through that forest base, say, one part of that or one invitation, and
Yeah.
then do a nature journaling riff off of that,
hmm
and then sort of dive into another sort of forest bathing experience, and then do a nature journaling riff off of that, instead of having maybe more of the forest bathing front loaded and more of the nature journaling back loaded, but to try to get those both to. I think that would be it'll be really cool to let's try that
Okay.
and let's see um what will come
hmm
of that. And this will also be more, I guess, based down in the valley.
Yes.
Um it will be interesting. Um I do like the idea of trying to sort of instead of having them more next to each other. They did overlap on the Venn diagram a little bit,
Yeah.
but just to try to bring there still might be some part that's just forest bathing and some part that's but let's experiment with that.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, what I'd also like to do is to just kind of to open up the conversation to the people here in the community. If people have a thought, an idea, Star, I'd really love to hear pick your brain about that. We have a person in our community who has done a lot of work in mindfulness as an author and a ordained monk with Thich Nhat Hanh, um, who might also have some insights in this. So anybody who wants to, but don't feel pressure to now you have to say something. But anybody who would like to, you can use the raise hand button to be joined into this conversation. Or you can just put comments, thoughts, and ideas um, into the chat. But we'd love to bring others into this conversation if you would like to participate. So want to let's bring in Ellen. Hi there. I'm going to add you
Hi.
to the spotlight. Hi there. Thanks for being with us.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, all of you both. This is exciting for me. I've been a forest therapy guide since 2019. Still did the 6 months, did the 8 days and the 6 months. And then I'm going through the nature journaling educators program. So this is a great day here. I guess just very curious to see how this evolves with both of you, and would love to hear again how this next program goes. Um, I I I lead a 2 hour forest bathing, and then an hour and a half nature journaling in various locations in Cincinnati, Ohio. And I've never combined them. I don't know if I'll have that opportunity because I would have to convince the actual nature centers or the Civic Garden Center to actually do this combination, but I'm very curious about it. And I've been wanting to bring in more mindfulness to the nature journaling
Mhm.
classes that I'm teaching. Um, it's still just it's a little bit of a conundrum because to be forest bathing, um, I could see maybe doing nature journaling as one invitation, but I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time.
Right.
And I can't envision actually drawing or journaling uh, throughout the entire program since it's kind of trying to get out of your head. I don't know.
Mm.
It's an interesting combination, but I think the mindfulness is very important for the nature journaling.
Right. Well, the beauty of having the 2 full days, right? The luxury of,
Yeah.
I mean, that was amazing because I really got to do, truly, both. And I think you bring up a good point. When to really do a full integration, you really do you'd really kind of and it's okay, but you would sometime at some point lose some of what the intent of the forest bathing is because you are getting into your head. When you're really, okay, how do I shade this? And how am I going to incorporate that shadow? That's a little bit different, and that's okay. But as you're right, it's not the pure kind of mindfulness experience of the forest bathing. You're right. So yeah, how to incorporate that into like a 90-minute or a 2 hour walk. I mean, you'd have to kind of really sell it as something, really unique and different.
Right, right. Thank you both.
Absolutely. Something that's really fun about this, though, is just um, I think sometimes people fear like is that real forest bathing then, or is that real nature journaling? Um, I think that um, especially if we're able to do a bunch of programs, we can try things and iterate them and mess around with it and see what happens. Um,
Throw some spaghetti on the wall.
throw some spaghetti on the wall.
Hmm.
And we will report back, Ellen, and let you know. Um, the Excellent. Let's bring in, I see Billy, Joe, and Star have their hands raised. Um, let's, Billy Joe, I'm going to bring you in first. Hey there.
Hey, so I'm not a forest bather per se by certification or anything, but I was just curious because I find that nature journaling is a way, like I understand that you're in your head, but I actually find it an escape at the same time. So it's interesting, depending on what it is you're doing, but I'm wondering if it's like a mindfulness setup, in terms of integrating the both. Like you start with an being immersed within the space and you go through some meditation and then you're given some time and an invitation to then nature journal those thoughts and feelings about that experience and sort of see if there is a way that it somehow heightens the way that the nature journaler is journaling in terms of being able to be keyed in more to those senses than maybe they would be from just coming out like a in a cold call kind of thing, right? Like I step outside, I find something and I start nature journaling. Like I wonder what that difference would be is to set that up and then to sort of take that time to do that sort of nature journal and I don't know whatever you give. I mean lots of times you can get quite a bit done in half an hour, let's say. You're given that half an hour and then you're asked to put away the nature journaler. And then you're maybe invited to go to a second space and you're
Mm.
invited again to go
Mm.
back into that sort of meditation piece and then sort of do that over again and then you kind of culminate with that sharing circle with the tea and then people are able to not only like share the nature journal but share the experience having the forest bathing integrated into it. So I don't see them myself, and again, I'm not a practitioner. I don't see them as two separate things. I see them as very much overlapping,
Mhm.
and then how you could use one to sort of overlap into the other. So then once you've had that experience of the meditation with the nature journal and then to go back to the meditation, do you find that your mind goes there more easily because now you've immersed in a double way. You've immersed through that sort of that expansive sort of meditation piece, but now you've connected on a different level
Yeah.
using those words, pictures, and numbers to sort of immerse yourself in that curiosity. So I always find I'm like more connected to nature sort of after that. So I'd be very interested to see if people slid in to that, that second invitation into a meditation a little bit easier because there's been a greater connection sort of through that. I don't know. That would be
Yeah.
something that you might want to think about.
No, I think you actually articulated something I didn't really have the words for when I was really thinking about this, combining these two things together. I think it would. I think the nature journaler who does have gets that, little bit of a meditative piece, a little bit of a really sense of a deep connection. They're going to bring that to the page.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. And I think even from a teacher perspective, like if you were working with children, we know that if we walk outside and we immediately go, okay, find something in nature journal, some kids get it and some kids are like, what are you talking about? And it's chaos. And we always kind of joke that the first couple times are pretty chaotic. But what happens if you invited them into this sort of meditative forest bathing practice? And for kids, you can't expect them to sit there that long, but I wonder if you just did some breathing and sort of centered them a little bit and then invited that in. I wonder what um the connect like the uptake for more kids to be involved, especially the kids who find it hard to sit and do that if we've centered them in some sort of way first. So I really think of those two things as being very much intertwined as opposed to two separate things. But that's it.
Yeah. Thank
Oh,
you.
that's going to be fun to play with.
I think it's an awesome idea that you guys are doing together. I think it's very, very cool. And I really like the concept of it for sure.
It's really big fun. Big
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
So Star, thank you also for being with us.
Sure. My pleasure, and nice to meet you, Dan. Yeah, I'm not a monk.
Uh,
Jack keeps trying to make me a monk, but I'm not a monk.
it's ordained minister.
I am an ordained interfaith minister, and I ordained twice, and I ordained also with Thich Nhat Hanh as a layperson, though, because
Okay.
I don't meet
I
the
don't I
gender
as a
qualification.
total noob, I don't know what the difference is. I
It
just know
doesn't
you're
matter.
cool and have insight.
It doesn't matter. Um, anyway, I'm terribly enthusiastic about this, and I think you guys are doing a great job. I wondered if you ask any questions of the participants before they come. That's what I would do. Do you have any experience in nature journaling? Do you have any experience in meditation? What do you most want to learn? That kind of thing. Because boy, I can see a big spectrum of differences here to deal with. How large is your group?
I think we were maxed at 14, I believe.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so I would survey them when they register just to try to get a little more information. And then the other thing I think I would be sure to do is to offer meditation first thing in the morning and at the end of the day, and it would be optional,
Mhm.
in people who are used to that and into that, they would like the structure, I think, of beginning and ending the day that way. If I was coming, I would like that. I would be
You know
happy.
what? I didn't do it this time, but on some of the multiple day ones, like combining with yoga that I have done,
Mhm.
I stumbled onto this morning ritual that I do almost every day. Try to do it with a beverage, and so I've met people early. I said, Totally voluntary. If you want to show up, whatever time it was before breakfast, and bring whatever beverage you'd like to bring, whether it's coffee, tea, water." And I just do like kind of a mindful. What I do is kind of a mindfulness activity that gives me an awareness of what this is and what it came from, and
Yeah.
also a sense of gratitude
Yeah.
that I am experiencing. So a very mindful imbibing of that first, sip of whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And I use a Thich Nhat Hanh quote that my wife brought to the house, and it says, um, "In this food, I see clearly the presence of the entire universe
Mhm. Yeah.
supporting my existence."
Yeah, I have that actually a different version of that hanging in our dining room.
Mhm.
Yeah. This food is the body of the cosmos. Yeah. So um yeah, I the other thing I would think of emphasizing a bit, which I didn't hear you mention, is walking meditation
Mhm.
for that connection to the earth. And it's a meditation practice. And if you do have people who are antsy, it's a good bridge. So I would use that. And then I asked in the chat, did you invite people to bring poetry, songs, etc., for tea ceremony time? Because that gives them something to plan and to enjoy as participants, I think.
Yeah, that's a good thought. I haven't, because usually that's a complete, people don't know that that's
The
coming.
surprise. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and to a degree, I would say that would be a little bit different because I kind of want to relieve people from performance stress.
Yeah, I understand that.
And they really are thinking about their poem, and how they're going to say it.
Yeah.
And in this sense, they get to just relax.
Nice. Yeah.
But I could see incorporating that in a different way, in a different part.
Yeah, that's typically something we do in Thich Nhat Hanh's community for tea ceremony. You just know it's going to happen and you bring something to share, a reading or whatever you want. So it can be and I don't know why you couldn't incorporate nature journals that way. Is there something in your journal you'd like to share that would be perfectly appropriate at tea ceremony time? And some people are very shy about sharing, so that's always optional. But
Yes, very much so.
yeah, so that's it. I don't have a lot to add to that, but wish I could come. It sounds wonderful.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, Dan.
Star, thank you so much.
I'm going to bring in Retta as well. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Star, could you please put into the chat a link to if people wanted to get your book on journaling and meditation?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Let's drop that into the chat. And as another resource for folks. Retta, thank you for joining us. But hold on, you're muted, and now you can unmute. Oops.
Thank you so much. What a great community. And I've followed you, your nature journaling for a long time. But what I wanted to ask was, I think you saw in the chat, I did my forest therapy training at the Arboretum in 2017 when we had that 7-day intense. And then had 6 months working with a mentor. But so I've been guiding there ever since, and it's still a journey. I'm still learning.
Yes.
For this walk, did everyone know that they were going to nature journal, or they knew that?
Well, I mean, there was information, which like kind of it would be the same, very similar to the what was in the link for the one in 2025 that I dropped in the chat. But it was nature bathing, forest bathing, and nature journaling. That was the name of the workshop. And of course, with Jack's name associated with it, I mean, I think people really latched onto that, and I think really, really expected nature journaling, maybe not really even knowing what forest bathing is.
Right.
In fact, I remember one of the on day 2 when there was some sharing. I think it was the woman who had written a song on Saturday night, and she played and sang, and another person chimed in. And in the song, it was something like, when Dan took us forest bathing, I was a little on the fence. I remember that line specifically. But then, the way it was guided and presented, it's like it was great. They really went up joining. But I think it illustrates the point that they didn't come really knowing what forest bathing is.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that, because I also was thinking about Ellen talking about time limitations. Most of the walks that I guide are 2 hours, some are 3. And I just think it's such a wonderful connector to offer nature journaling, giving people permission, no expectation. Whatever they brought with is enough. And also, I think it was Billy Joe. I have guided, because I've been a long time early childhood teacher. I've done a couple forest therapy walks with preschoolers.
Oh, wow.
And it's in our DNA. They know what to do. And I follow that same framework. Invitations are a little bit different, but we offered nature journals we made nature journals with just cardstock and offered them. We had an elementary school come to do forest therapy walks, sensory walks. We call them sensory walks, but instead of our sit spot time, we just gave them nature journals and pencils and said, whatever you would like to write about or draw or just sit, that's fine. And all of them, it was just a treasure for each of them to do. So I think that was and the meditation, we've just started to offer nighttime meditative walks at the Arboretum. And I've had the honor, even though it's, as I say, it's a journey for me, but using poetry is so powerful. And I often use John O'Donohue, Mary Oliver, and of course, Robin Wall Kimmerer. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Looking forward to this.
Thank you.
Retta, thank you so much for sharing that.
And Jack, I'm probably got to wrap up too. I've got to.
I think it's about time for us to eat. It's lunchtime or past from here.
Right.
Um, but I want to send a shout out to my co-host Billy Joe Reed, all the way from snowy Canada right now. For help, thanks for helping us run this show today. Um, Deep gratitude and appreciation to you, Dan, uh, for being with us today. And I so look forward to being again with you in the field. And it's wonderful to have a colleague where we can kind of push each other, and we've got realms of understanding that overlap, but also there's part of the Venn diagrams where we're both constantly learning to each other from each other. Um, and I want to encourage other educators who are watching this to look for ways to push yourself outside of your own bubble. Can you find a community of peers who can help you take steps to try to do something differently? And as we do, let's just report back with each other and share all of that. Dan, it's an honor and a delight to be with you. Thank you so much for being part of our community here.
Likewise, Jack. I really appreciate the invitation. I'm so glad that that you created this opportunity.
All right, friends, have a really good day. Be
Bye.
kind. Let's get outside and explore. Let's share wonder and beauty with others. This is a beautiful world. Let's let's engage with it, engage with each other, and together work to protect and preserve what is here.